Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Welcome, everybody, to Thursdays. We have a really cool and interesting project today. We have industry greats from Washington. They all have variable experiences in the industry, and they all bring something different. And so we have several different wine brands that we will be tasting. And I'll just kind of reiterate what I've told the team here is when Caleb was on my podcast earlier in the year, we kind of bonded over working for St. Michel and the conversation that goes around why we need a sideways moment for Washington Syrah because we all love it so much. And so as we kept talking, this idea of getting industry greats on a call and tasting their favorite wines. I know it's hard to pick one when you're a winemaker, but everybody's got a wine that we're going to taste. And I think what we'll do is just have everybody kind of take a turn, and then you can kind of talk about yourself.
Well, it's just, it's a delight. It's so great to be on your program. Thanks so much for having us all here. You're a Washington alumna and you know your stuff. So this is great. Great to have a little party about Syrah. And, in the little pre-chat, Bob was talking about how amazing Syrah is and how it fits the bill for so many wine lovers in America. We've got an amazing group of friends here. And we're spanning the decades here from Bob's anchor position there on the history of Washington wine. So glad to have you here, Bob. And it was just, all these friends just came trippingly off the tongue when Jesse and I were talking about this tasting to round everybody up. It was so obvious who we should put together some newbies and some great core people who have been showing off Washington Syrah for some decades here. And so I'm delighted. What I'm doing today is I am showing off this Rattlesnake Hills with a rattlesnake on it. Rattlesnake Hills Syrah, and it is the Bosma Vineyard. They have this beautiful vineyard up in the Rattlesnake Hills. And Rattlesnake Hills is part of what I call the old world of Yakima Valley. It's the upper northern section, northwestern section of Yakima Valley, and it's got a really interesting soil type, which is the Ellensburg complex, and it's basically old riverbed from the Cascade Mountains. That makes it a bit different because, like David Rodriguez's amazing wines that he's getting from his vineyards on the top of the hill up there, Bosma's got a beautiful hilltop vineyard that's pulling its wine up out of some really special soils, and Dichotomy is right nearby as well. So we got three producers up here in the Western Yakima Valley. Bob could talk about the depth and history of Yakima Valley because he was there going on years ago, making really beautiful wines.
Hey, Caleb. Quick question for you. You mentioned the soil. Is one of the requirements for Rattlesnake Hills AVA that they're pre-flood soils?
I can chime in about some of those soils, though, Bob. Have you ever worked with Porteous Vineyards or Porteous?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, Porteous and even Sunnyside, where Snipes AVA is now, there's a huge band of the ancient Columbia River cobbles. So when the Columbia River used to run right through where the Yakima River is today, and it left this riverbed of, people talk about the Rocks District in Walla Walla, and those are huge, boulder-sized rocks, softball to football size. These are like stone skipping size rocks. And they all came from Canada and northern Idaho and that area. And I remember seeing them for the first time in Paul Porteous's vineyard back in the early 2000s. And I thought, oh, how cool, the Yakima River brought all these, this river rock down at some point. And he says, well, actually, no, those are from the Columbia River. Now it's 30 miles to the east of where you were standing. And so I always felt that was really unique about that area. You just don't see a lot of that. There's not a huge band of it either. So
Have you been on that cutout at Snipes where there's probably that 40-foot, and there are some great big sweet potato rocks there too. They're not just all skipping stones.
That is true. That is true. Yeah.
There's some big rocks there, and everyone does attribute rocks to the Rocks District, obviously, as they should, but you can't miss those. That's happening at Snipes. I mean, it's really geologically so unique, especially for that mid-Yakima Valley area.
Right. I've taken photos there many times.
Yeah.
Just to get all the colors. It's very beautiful.
And we have vineyards, as Caleb said, sitting right down at canal level. So we're pretty much the lowest. And the temperature difference at night is amazing. Even between here and Zilla, which is 10 miles away, if that, consistently throughout summer, we'll get down into the 50s. There'll be the odd night that kind of hovers around in the 70s or so, but consistently we'll get down to the 50s by 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. And that is just phenomenal for growing these delicate floral characteristics on the nose, but then also that really fine tannin and acid to support the structure.
I think that heat issue, a temperature issue, is really important for Syrah. To me, the variety is such a chameleon that expresses its diversity depending on maybe even more on temperature. And I bite my tongue when I say that, but I think temperature has so much to do with the expression of Syrah character, warm sites. And we're having a warm site, Betz family today, it's warm site, Red Mountain, etc. But as I take a look at the variety across the state, over the years, worked with Syrah from the original planting off of Red Willow Vineyard, Dick Boucher, Mid Yakima, Red Mountain, Walla Walla, Rocks, etc. Just this diversity of character expression. And I attribute it, yeah, obviously the stones, the geology has a big influence, but you've got a lot of difference in temperature, not just how much heat you get, but how you get your heat. And that daily, seasonal, weekly variation in temperature between the areas here. We're having La Côte Rousse from Betz family, which is the red slope, and we named it after the Red Mountain. And this wine started in 1999. We started making it. Was first Syrah we harvested. And Red Mountain seemed like the spot to go, and it's off of Scott Williams' spot there at the end of Sunset Road. And it's just big boy. But what I find is even, the heat is good, but what helps that site not lose its Syrah-ness, the character of Syrah, is this huge canopy that it throws. It's a vigorous variety. And this canopy, I mean, you're looking with binoculars at the end of a cane, that keeps going out and out, but it helps to shade the fruit a little bit, give them enough exposure, but not too much. So as a general thing for me, too much heat can rob Syrah of its Syrah-ness.
I agree, Bob. As a matter of fact, to add to that, I think that we need to actually, affirm that there are varieties that, as a viticulturist, you can handle a little bit better, and you can manipulate in the field a certain way for the finished wine to taste a certain way. With Syrah, it doesn't happen that way. Syrah is very prone to the site in which it's planted. So the variability right now, having trays, that are from a completely different area, in Walla Walla, which are fantastic. And then you have us that are more from the Rattlesnake Hill area. It's just going to be really, really fun to taste those.
We harvest, Betz family harvests that part of that original block that was planted at Red Willow. And it's a 3-acre block. We get about an acre. It's south facing, a lot of sand, and it gets powerful. Try to keep it down.
Is that the 85 planting, Bob, the old stuff?
86.
86.
86 planting. Yeah, 86 planting. And it typically delivers, it's like the fingers on your hand, you love them all, but there's something unique about the character from that site. And keep the yield down and try to shoot for about 2.5 TPA. And it's dense, it's rich, it's fragrant, it's structured, but with, I don't know, just a wonderful silkiness to it. We're not tasting it today, but it's, we call it the Côte Patriarche to pay homage to Mike Sauer, the vineyard owner, and David Lake. The two of them collaborated on the first planting of Syrah in Washington. at that site, and we still pull fruit off of it. So the patriarch slope, in honor of those two guys, it's emblematic of that issue with Syrah that I find. It's just got so much pigment, a much lower astringency. Sort of, to me, the opposite of Pinot Noir, which has delicate pigment and a lot of structure, a lot of astringency to it. And of course, Cabernet Sauvignon has a bunch of both.
What's the clone there, Bob, on that side? You remember?
It was, I think, Phelps.
Joseph
Yeah,
Phelps.
Phelps was all the early stuff.
Yeah, it was probably Samsonite based, came up in a suitcase, but
That's what you mean by that.
yeah, Samsonite clone. Exactly. And
There's a one-liner for you, Jesse.
There you
and
go.
there,
Samsonite base.
okay. Don't repeat that with any government officials around.
There's a lot of that in Washington, though. So
Yes. Too late.
Well,
We're too late on that one.
there was a time when the Phelps clone off of Red Willow was probably responsible for 75% of the Syrah planted in the state. Now, with clonal abundance and proliferation, it's probably not there, but it was responsible for a whole lot of fruit. Dick Boucher's stuff. A lot of that was originally from Phelps.
Yep, all of Lewis Vineyard that Eric Dunham and we work with, that's 100% Phelps. That was planted back in '98, which was still very early. There were less than 100 acres of Syrah, I'll bet, planted in the state in the late '90s even. And so I will tell you, Bob, I had the '88 Columbia Red Willow Vineyard Syrah within the last 5 years. Someone had it from their cellar, and that wine was still absolutely stunning. First crop off of a Syrah vineyard in Washington State, that wine was still, yeah.
Think of how we made Syrah back then, harvesting at 23 and a half bricks and a TA of 0.7, probably high mallet. And
See up there.
Yeah.
Probably like a late October pick at 23 bricks too.
Sure.
Can I go back just for a second for non-winemaker lingo? I had not heard of this Phelps. Like, can you explain a little bit more about what that means? And like, did they as a winemaking team brought up some vines and like?
Well, if we told you, we'd have to kill you.
Well, that's okay. It's worth it.
I don't know how it got there, but this whole issue of, virus-free and bacterial-free, I doubt anything like that happened. Just because of how things were in the 80s, you just didn't. But David Lake, who was the winemaker at Columbia, convinced Mike Sauer, with whom he had a very unique, almost exclusive relationship with, to plant this first Syrah planting. And it turns out to be an absolutely stunning decision for Washington State to give this state its opportunity to see how it can perform with this. When we were, remember, were you guys born in the 80s? I'm looking around.
Just a little before.
And I think, Riesling dominated. We were growing Merlot because we weren't successful in getting malolactic done with Cabernet. And so the wines were, and so Merlot, things were just, it was so, if you consider that we're in our young adulthood right now, we were not even adolescents back then. We were children. And
that's what we keep kind of explaining to people. Wine just takes so much time. You have an idea, you plant a crop, 5 years later, you might get some decent wine off it. 2 years later, the market says they don't like it. What are you going to do? Rip it out? Probably not. But being now 40 years old, now is the time when I think it's really shining. For me, I get to come along after doing this job for 20 years. And in my 40s, I get to buy this estate vineyard that was planted in the late 80s. We know by now really what's working, what's not working. We can rework the vineyard as to what the market appreciates as well now, because we're a bit more professional. And it's just an exciting time for another generation to come through and have their footprint on the shoulders of giants that we've already walked with, who had to go through all those trials and tribulations. So you can't, it's a bit of a joke saying how many different varieties there's planted on our 1 10-acre vineyard, with 9 being the answer. But, it was all about trials and seeing what would work, and we're grateful.
Hey, Jared. Yeah, I mean, there's a site that I pick fruit from in Zilla. It's one of the highest elevation sites in the lower valley. It's called Carthage. It's kind of up the hill.
What's the
And
elevation up there, David?
it's about 1450 on top of the hill. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the highest. It's not the highest, obviously, but it is one of the highest in the lower valley. And it's a really, really hot site. Southern facing slopes, rocky. But my buddy Mohammed, he farms that, and he has 11 varieties. He bought this site as is, right? He has 11 varieties and 4.5 acres. So you're a little better than him.
Obviously, we're friends with Mohammed as well, and he's doing some fantastic Mourvedre that we would love to get
Yes.
a on, but one day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we actually purchased the site from Australia online, sight unseen, and we did it because of the Yakima Valley has for its wine. I'm originally from Spokane, and I went down to Australia and I was working for 12 years. And then we decided to start our own brand, and Yakima wines were always the original greats, and Syrah being one of them. And since we had spent so much time working with Syrah down in Australia, it was that was the easiest thing that we could come back up here and go, okay, we know how to do this. Syrah is nothing but reliable and reliably delicious.
Can I ask you guys a question about your time in Australia and now your time in Yakima?
Sure.
So you both have the advantage of making wine in a different place, like truly a different place, as opposed to, we get to make wine from different AVAs in the state and different vineyards. And, Bob was talking about how much of a chameleon Syrah is, and that's just within our own state. You know what I mean? So it's like we've got 1,000 different flavor profiles and aromatic profiles of the same grape just in our state. Now you guys are making it down in Australia. What part of Australia were you in?
We were down in South Australia, so we spanned from McLaren Vale to the Barossa Valley.
Okay.
And the difference being there as well is the vines would be between 30 and 150 years old.
Young vines are like 30, 40 years old there.
Yeah. Exactly.
I remember in the early 2000s when I first got in the wine business, I was working for Dunham Cellars, and we drank a lot of Australian wines. And we really looked up to a lot of the wines that were being made down there. And certainly stylistically, they're very different than I think what we make today, at least what I make today, and even different from what Eric was making back then. They're making different wines at Dunham now. Where did you guys fit in Australia? Because I also know there's a big shift away from that ripe, oaky style. There's a bunch of new producers in Australia now making really restrained, beautiful, elegant, a lot of stems, no new oak, all that stuff. Was that kind of where you guys were?
Yeah, well, I think that is a worldwide phenomenon. Again, it's a generational change. I mean, I can throw that back at you. And I worked for Rosenblum in San Francisco, sourcing fruit from Napa and Paso Robles back in the early 2000s. We had some
That was
wine.
Jeff Cohn, right?
7-8, yeah. Zinfandel, 17.5% alcohol. Like it was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
100% new oak. Generationally, I think things are changing anyway, and that is why Washington is in such a awesome place to be able to go with that flow. Cooler climate wines, lower alcohol, more aromatics, and when you're talking of like someone in Florida drinking red wine, what are they going to want? This 16.5% monster or a 13.5, 13.9 maybe elegant white pepper Syrah. There's one that is far more marketable. The fact of the matter is there is a difference between Shiraz and Syrah, even though biologically may not be. Shirazes are black pepper, a lot darker in color, and it's just because, unlike I was saying here, most nights are getting down to the 50s. In Australia, you can go an entire month and a half without it getting below 85, 90 at all. And then every day is 110, 120.
Yeah.
We need to keep the water up and not let the vines shut down at that stage. We have something called bagging out, where essentially the vine is trying to preserve itself and it'll take all the moisture from the grape. And so you learn to work with that kind of vineyard. You learn to work in that vinification process. So we do a lot of whole bunch to try and get some greenness in there. But at the end of the day, Syrah and Shiraz is different, pretty much climatically more than anything.
Jared, you mentioned something there about it gives you an opportunity. And I look at Syrah so differently from Bordeaux varieties in terms of what it allows the winemaker to do. Bordeaux varieties have a certain fixed MO that they got to operate by. And then all of a sudden you get to Syrah and, you take a look at harvest dates are a big deal. Whole stems, indigenous yeast, fermentation vessel, vatting time, barrel selection, barrel influence, barrel length. I mean, there are so many opportunities that we have that the rules are not nearly as applicable as they are for Bordeaux varieties in terms of what you can do. And you've got leeway, but nothing like Syrah. I think Syrah gives the winemaker such a fun palate to work with.
You can make a 12.5% alcohol Syrah or a 15% alcohol Syrah and everything in between, and they're all going to be delicious in their own way. And they may not be for everybody, and you may have a style that you prefer, but they're all going to be a very high quality. You can't really say that about Cabernet, especially in Washington these days. Like a 12.5% Cabernet. I'd be nice to be able to go back to that, but I don't know what that would take. I wouldn't want to be the guy to make that one.
Might have to leave it in bottle for 5 years first, and that's a risky business strategy.
At least, and then it gets through ML, as Bob was saying earlier about cab.
Well, I always say that you can tell what a winery does by the quality of or the style of its Syrah and the style of its Chardonnay. So those two things kind of dictate, because those two are the blank palettes for winemakers, right?
Yeah, I like that.
I agree.
I
agree.
Go down a rabbit hole, but it's
Should
funny.
we try another wine while we're chatting? Who would like to go next?
Well, I can go next if you guys want. I don't know. Oh, sorry, please, Rosie.
Go. Okay. Well, since we've just been chatty, ours is the dichotomy Syrah, and we do 25-30% whole bunch in it, and we are 900 feet elevation and right along kind of the Sunnyside Canal, and our outlook is looking at Snipes Mountain.
Oh.
And this site used to be what used to be called Teft Cellars, which was one of very early wineries. And it went out of business years and years ago. And we bought it online from Australia, like I said. So
gutsy.
Yeah. And this is our first vintage, and it came out absolutely phenomenal.
And you said you're looking at the back of Snipes Mountain. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the north side of 82. I mean.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, for us being a young business, this was the first harvest. So we just put all of our Syrah, all the 3 acres that we have, into this bottle. But as we're going on, we are actually separating some of the better blocks off and doing a premium Syrah as well. But just starting out, this is, 20 years of experience in making Shiraz and putting it in a Syrah bottle.
Well, congratulations, you guys. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. What vintage, by the way?
22. For us, we were doing the after Halloween pick that year.
And it's on the market. What's the price at it?
What's the price on it? Retail $32.
Okay. Steal.
Very fair. That's another advantage we have in Washington.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, as I said, though, we will do different pricing tiered structures as we go forward. It's just our first harvest moving here from the opposite end of the planet. We had to go pretty straight down the line. So, as Rosie said, this is an honest look at our winemaking.
You're gonna have a fun time getting to learn your vineyard too. That's always a blast.
Yeah, well, we didn't have much to say about the vineyard this year Right. In 2022, we just kind of came and got the crop.
Yeah.
So, and did what we did, which is fun.
You rolled the dice.
Yeah. It's fun to roll the dice sometimes and just take a chance.
Yeah.
The gift of youth.
Well,
Sorry.
After 20 years making wine for other people and across 5 different wineries, obviously it's nice to go out on our own and whatever this is, we own it, and it's all about passion in that bottle for us. But also after 20 years, getting to learn a completely different new environment is awesome. Get the grey matter ticking over again and actually have to scratch our head a little bit during harvest again, and experimenting again. So it really is fun to go on to that next stage.
And you can do it with Syrah. That's what's so fun. You can do
Yeah.
it with Syrah. I love that.
Can you talk us through some of those challenges or those differentiated pieces of winemaking that you're not used to?
I mean, the obvious one is, so I grew up in the Barossa Valley. Rosie and I worked mainly in McLaren Vale, which is well and truly Mediterranean climate. In Italy, Sicily, complete opposite from here. Where we were in Australia, there is zero issue in getting anything ripe. If anything, you have to hold it back. We have to keep really big canopies to shade the fruit. We potentially have to water it pre-vintage to try to hold things back. Otherwise, you can have a problem with being sugar ripe, but not seed ripe. And then we came here and Halloween was approaching and we're like, are we going to pick these grapes this year? Or that was a learning curve. There is a massive amount of pressure in Australia to get fruit off, and there's tank space issues because everything's ready within 2 weeks for the entire state. So the pressure being taken right off here. I mean, to go from 23 bricks to 25 bricks could take a month. So yeah, there's a lot less pressure on that side of it.
Bob, the 22 reminded me of what like the old school this was like, you know, where we were harvesting late in the year, and like Jared said, you've got this long delay for 1 bricks. All you're seeing is a little bit of pH change, right? The fruit's sitting out there in the cold. You're hoping it doesn't frost, and it's kind of like you've got your fruit in the fridge all night, and you take it out, you put it in the warm sun just for a couple hours, and you put it back. And then you put it out in the warm sun for a couple hours, and you put it back, and it's barely ripening, right? So we have this long slide into the end of harvest, and it's so different, right? And like 22 actually was one of the latest flowerings. It was like 2011. It was a late June flowering. And I was freaked out in 22. When I was at Hyatt, I was like, oh man, first year at Hyatt, we got a late flowering. Boy, this is going to be a tough one. I knew it was going to be late, but yeah,
late.
walking to Washington State and be like, whoa, this is taking forever. We're going to get in before the frost and we're at 22 bricks. Is this even going to be wine I want to make? I love what you've got here because it not only shows the quality of a cooler vintage, guys, but it's also a really clean, beautiful expression of what you can do character-wise. I've had your 23 and 24 Syrahs, and I know you've got an enormous amount of range in your skill set, and your wines are going to show beautiful range. And they're going to show beauty in all the range. I mean, this is a cooler season harvest. It just is.
Especially, especially compared to 21, which was incredibly hot.
Yeah, exactly. Go from 21 super early, screaming hot, picking in September and August to like, whoa, are we going to get in before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I kind of feel like this harvest is looking a bit the same. Does anyone think anything of that?
Same as
This is an
22.
early flowering. This is an early flowering.
We're right on. I just looked at the growing degree days, and we are right on track with last year, like identical.
Last year was very good.
It was beautiful.
I want to go back to your comment about the twins, though. Despite the heat, 21s are wonderfully fragrant and expressive. I like
Bob, the only problem I had with is that the fruit picked in the Rattlesnake Hills, Natchez area we got hit by smoke because of the smokes over there in the west side, right? We had a lot of fires in Natchez, and that was the only problem we had. It's not because of the heat dome itself. It's more because of, the proximity of new smoke.
Sure.
So
Sure.
21 for us was a little bit more complicated. It wasn't a smoke taint that I was like, oh, I need to dump this, because it wasn't. It's good, but still, I was struggling with that a little bit.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay.
Mhm.
But as a vintage across the AVA, Columbia Valley, to me, it's surprisingly balanced and not oppressively gargantuan. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, that's the bonus of being in Washington. Again, that's the bonus of being in Washington.
Yeah.
Even if you got, or it maybe thought of as a pretty tough year comparatively to, I'm assuming, California and Australia and South Africa, going through climate change and, varying amounts of water people are able to access. Washington is in a great spot.
Well, you say that, but this year, hopefully you guys aren't on the Rosa district, because I've already heard they're going to close. They're going to shut the Rosa off here.
No,
We're
they
on the
did.
Sunnyside
They
Canal.
did.
We're in on Sunnyside, so that gave us confidence to buy online.
I heard from Hugh Shields that Rosa was cut off a week ago or so.
And what is that?
Rose is an irrigation canal that comes out of the Yakima River, and it feeds the farms with water straight from the river.
Yeah, it's a junior.
They just close the gate, and the canal dry.
But I mean, you had those same sort of issues. Obviously, California has its own water issues. In South Australia, everyone has their own private dam or pond or reservoir that you fill either naturally by literally damming up a ravine or something, or pumping out well water and filling it with your own well water. And regularly, we run out of water. You just got to do everything you can to keep the vine alive. And that's commonplace. So again, I'll reiterate, Washington's in a pretty good spot.
You were, Jared, you were talking about harvesting all the way out to Halloween in 22. We work with a Syrah site that's in just north of Prosser off of Gap Road. So if you follow Gap all the way until it dead ends, all the way up to Snipes, if you take a left, you'll go to Dick's Place, Boucher. But if you take a right, you'll go to Loess Vineyard. And it is a high elevation site, so it's probably quite a bit cooler than where you guys are. Almost every year, we work with Syrah all over the state. That's always my last pick.
Yeah.
And it's, on the early side, it's like October 15th, even in a warm vintage. But on a late vintage, I've picked that in November on several occasions, 2011 being one of them. And I think 22, we got it off the week of Halloween. But it's just very interesting how, again, you can't lump Washington into one area, because, the Columbia Valley, if you were to take a photo of that and then try to overlay it on top of, say, California, it's massive, north to south, east to west. It doesn't really mean anything when it comes to, like, what is that bottle of wine, other than the fact that it's probably a Washington State wine. But, it doesn't really mean a whole lot from that standpoint. But it does.
Right. It's kind of like saying, Columbia Valley is kind of like saying, well, it's central Spain or south of France or
California in general.
Germany. Yeah.
That's why I'm a fan of the multiple recent sub-AVAs that we've got in the state. I think it gives the consumer a greater idea of character. We're all going to produce wine of reasonably good to really great quality, but it's a question of character. AVA specificity helps you define that character.
Yes.
Yeah.
The challenge with AVAs, though, Bob, is that we understand that the majority of customers, and I say the majority, I do mean the mass majority of customers, don't really understand the differences of those AVAs. Certainly wine collectors and people who want to talk to us about geeking out about wine know where the Rocks District and Milton Freewater AVA is. They've heard of that. But when you use that on a bottle of wine and then it goes to a grocery store in Missouri, the likelihood of that having an impact probably isn't that great. And so that's where Columbia Valley comes into play. And That's one of the things I always admired about Chateau Ste. Michelle, being a smaller winery and going to Georgia or Florida or South Carolina or wherever to go sell wine. A lot of this is, years ago though, but a lot of folk, their only exposure to Washington was Chateau Ste. Michelle. And I was so grateful for that because I knew that you're not going to find a better $8 bottle of Cabernet on a grocery store shelf than a bottle of St. Michelle Cabernet. If you were to compare that against all the other stuff out there in that price range, it was head and tails better than all the stuff coming out of the Central Valley, California. So I knew they had a good experience, at least with Washington. And then we could then show our wines and hopefully they see, what we're doing on a quality level and stuff. Not to say those weren't quality wines, but for the price point, they were very high quality. So, yeah.
No, and I don't disagree. There's great benefit to the macro for an emerging region. It's like, single vineyards out of Burgundy from Moray Saint Denis. I mean, people are, unless you're a geek, a collector, a rock star who spends money crazy, it's not going to make a difference to you. But, and that's the
It
beauty.
make a difference to your pocketbook.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of Washington is you're getting that really high quality at a really low price. I've had bottles recently of Bourgogne Rouge that I ended up pouring the bottle away, and it's $22, $28, $30 a bottle, and it's disappointing wine because it's unbalanced. It's not from a single site. It's probably overcropped to the extent that they can, and it's declassified or whatever. I don't know the reasons, but that's part of the beauty of Washington, Columbia Valley, AVA.
Hey, Bob.
The people, just real quickly, wrap it up. The people on this screen right now, we are all into understanding Loess Vineyard versus Boucher or rocks versus Snipes rocks. And I get that. I'm supporting both. I love them both.
So, Bob, if you've done so much great work over the last 4 decades, 5 decades, you've just seen so many stories, you've told our stories so well. We're going to keep going, and we've got another several decades ahead. What can we do to take a major lesson from you on how to communicate about Washington wine? What do you want to see us do for the next?
I wish I had the
I need some
solution.
one-line.
Nose to the brimstone. No,
Yeah.
I've been telling the story, part of this deal for this is my 50th harvest in Washington. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm still amazed at the lack of awareness, the lack of putting us in the right frame in people's minds. It's gone beyond the question I was asked in 1978, which side of the Potomac River do we grow the Washington grapes on? Okay. Yeah, I get it. So we've made some progress, but we still have not captured that cachet. And the one thing that I keep coming back to is never forgetting quality and character. Quality, it kind of is in our blood.
Hallelujah.
But character, wine character, because we will never be able to produce Aussie Shiraz or Hillside Napa Cabernet, okay? But we can produce wine of fabulous quality that has Washington character. And how do we transmit that? How do we communicate that to people that this is character that deserves your attention? It's going to happen in your lifetimes, but maybe not in mine. I don't know. But you guys, 20, 30 years from now, I think the world's going to be a different place. And I don't want to lean on the crutch of climate change because that's something we're going to all adapt to in some way or another. I mean, whether it's Bordeaux allowing new varieties to be experimented with, okay, or, is Bill Harlan planting, some crazy,
Nationality.
that's going to do well when it's 10 degrees warmer on average in Napa. I don't know, but focusing on character and quality and keep on telling the message. Caleb, I wish I had the answer.
I wonder, Bob, if we've got this right. We've got Jesse's pod. Here we are. We're showing up. We're giving you some visuals. We're telling great stories. And I wonder if maybe what we can do is just do more stories. Like Trey's got this great backdrop. We can see Walla Walla right over his shoulder. I think the visuals, giving the visuals. We're not on the Potomac. We're not in the pine trees of Seattle. We're in the desert. remind people over and over. And I'm really glad the Wine Commission has like pictures of sagebrush and desert, you know, and the blue sky. And you got to remind people that's where we're from.
All of the above. All of the above. And, you know, it's so easy in this challenging market to think about, you know, all these market forces. And in my mind, I hope that our wine community, our winemakers always remember that the market and the wine are two separate things. And the market is going to be challenging. You know, we've seen things before, but never forget that this is what we are about. Okay. It's making the wine itself and continuing your focus, getting through the challenges. Think of the winter of, let's see, it was December of 98 till February of 99. Pardon me, 78 to 79.
Yeah.
The temperature in the Columbia Valley did not get above freezing. And there was probably a 7 to 10 day stretch where it didn't get above zero. And so we pulled out, ended up losing 65% of the vines. So what do? Is you pull them out and you start again, you do it. I remember when we were planting vines at down on the Columbia at the Columbia Crest. This would have been early. Somebody popped up with the word nematode. Oh my God, what's nematode? It's gonna, you know, everyone was kind of freaked out, and Wade Wolf got involved, and you know, we weathered that storm too. And back to my statement, the gift of youth, keep it up. Okay. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Well,
Great to see you guys revive dichotomy. It's great to see you guys revive, you know, the old theft and take on some wines at dichotomy.
Well, I mean, it's a long-term game. It's a passion project. It's a younger generation of owners coming through. It's not cheap to get into agriculture. It's even worse with wine, where we don't see any money back for a couple of years. Yeah, obviously, people getting into this kind of thing, it is about passion. It's also got to be about business as well, though. The people we bought this place off of only wanted to have passion and had no idea actually how to make wine, which was probably a slight holdback for them. So it's about finding that balance of business savvy and being able to stay in the game, to be honest.
Jared, I think we have to end up doing is we have to make sure that we are creating a product that resonates with people. And right now we have to shift a lot of our focus to that younger generation. And, you know, you're talking about younger generation winery owners like yourselves and some of the other folks that are getting into the business today. Hopefully the product that they're making and the way they're presenting that to this customer is going to resonate with them. You know, I feel like we all make really great wine. In the end, it's, you know, like, are you authentic? Are you telling an authentic story? You know, I mean, yeah, there's 1,000 wineries in Washington, but you know, all the wines aren't the same. Okay, well, why are they different? Okay, well, that's our job, is explain to these folks why these wines are different. What's authentic about your brand? What's authentic about
Getting
the
them out
wine?
here and getting them comfortable in a winery. Because I grew up in the Barossa Valley, I have a distorted view of it. I grew up in wineries and tasting rooms. It was very normal. It's such a big industry. Most of my friends are winemakers, vineyards, whatever. And so we need the younger people around here to feel comfortable in a tasting room, working harvest in a winery, you know, like vintage interns. And that's how I got into this game was just starting with being a vintage intern. Fell in love with it and decided to take it further. And at that stage, all the other interns were my age. So we need to keep getting those early 20-year-olds interested in the industry, seeing how much fun it can be. I mean, it is a fun industry.
Yeah.
That's just it. So we're in this fun business. And then I think a lot of times about how wine is presented, and I'm not
It can be a bit
pointing fingers at anybody out in the industry, but like, good grief, could it be any more stuffy? You know, and intimidating, and all the things that make it so difficult for what we're trying to do, and that's to try to get new wine drinkers, and we're just throwing all these. I say we, but there's a lot of people in the industry that still throw up all these barriers everywhere. that it's almost like you must know this much to walk in the building to have a good time.
Yeah.
And that is just so ridiculous, you know?
No, you've got to
What's
be
great
willing
about
to have
what
a glass of wine and then have a good time. That's
I mean,
it's fine.
for us, it's like, come on in and pick out a record, and then, oh, we'll talk about wine after you pick out a record. And now they're, you know, kind of relaxed and comfortable and, you know, in a good space listening to their Bob Marley album, whatever the hell they want to listen to. We can
Yeah.
spend a few minutes talking about that, and then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, this is our Riesling, and it comes from this cool vineyard up here. That's like, you know, that's the goal. That's the
I think
goal.
there's more conversation on this, but I think Bob has to go in 10 minutes. So I want him to get to tasting his wine. And I will say, when it comes to St. Michel, in my experience, Ted Basler, who was the CEO or president at the time that I was there, what he would always say is, when there's a Washington wine on a menu in a restaurant, we all win because rising tides move all boats, or whatever the whatever that quote is. A terrible one-liner. I blew it. And I think that's also important, you know. The more opportunities that we have to get on a menu, the more liquid to lips and by the glass and all that can, you know, really elevate the Washington industry. And obviously we're all very much passionate and wanting to see Washington win more, right? I mean, I get with, you know, Bob, and your 50th, I can't believe it's your 50th vintage year. That's just
Not either.
incredible.
It's all here. Every one of those hairs is. Yeah.
Every
But you
hair
just
has a story.
you just had the best one-liner of the day. More liquid to lips. I've never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. This wine, Jesse, we've been making it since '99. It was the first Syrah we made off of Scott Williams' stuff there at the end of Sunset up the hill. And we chose rows that were at the very top of his irrigation regime system, and they were the least irrigated. Okay. They always struggled. They didn't look as robust as the lower rows. So we chose the last couple of rows there, and we farmed that for, it's still getting fruit off of it, I think. I am not sure about this last vintage. And then in 2 years later, we added some Ciel de Cheval to the blend and did a mix of clones. This wine, the 2020, is a little bit of an experiment. I think the tendency, go back to what I said at the very beginning, the tendency for Syrah, to me, with too much heat, is it loses some of its character. That's important. Its floral character, especially. Yes, it builds richness and gras. Okay, the fatness of it. But this year, the 22 has a lot of Red Mountain, but it's the first time that we've added a little bit from Olsen, which is just to the west, Syrah, just to the west of the AVA line. Olsen Brothers has some Syrah there. We've gotten Mourvèdre and Senso and Counoise from there before, but this is the first time that we've gotten some Syrah and blended into it. So it does carry a Yakima Valley AVA instead of a Red Mountain AVA as a result of it. But it still has that power Red Mountain profile, I think, with a little more delicacy. Color is not so opaque. It has love purple black. I think color is an invitation to pleasure. And this wine lacks that Red Mountain blackness that you can get. It's it's all that black fruit. It's black raspberry, blackberry. I'm not good with a litany of characters, but it has Syrah-ness. That's what I love. A little bit of roasted meat and even a little bit of, it's not garrigue per se, but you do get this dried bay leaf and a little bit of scrubby earth sort of smell to it. Long finished, delicious. I like wines that taste good. And the beauty of being a small winemaker, and everybody on this screen is a small winemaker, is you get to make the wine you want to drink. It's a great benefit. And hopefully other people want to drink it too. More liquid on the lips.
Liquid on the lips.
Thank you.
What about pairing, Bob? Is there any particular dish that you feel just hits it out of the park with Syrah?
I don't have a real favorite. I can drink Syrah with a lot of stuff. I grill a lot of salmon. Okay. And a lot of times we'll drink Grenache because all wine would be red if it could. Okay.
There's your wine liner.
Yes.
Okay. And so I drink Grenache with grilled salmon, but Syrah, a Syrah that has a texture with a lot of silkiness to it. Okay. I think can do well with grilled Syrah, not poached.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Grilled Syrah where you've got smoke and you've got char and you've got, that crust on it. I think Syrah does well.
I feel like there's a range of flavors too. Like sometimes you can get a really nice spicy Syrah, whereas other Syrahs, like you were saying, are more silky and soft. So I feel like, do you feel like the Washington State can actually handle different flavor profiles of Syrah?
We have to because our individual AVAs produce different characters. It goes back to this chameleon factor that we talked about earlier. They have to. And it's a question of what do people like? And that's the beauty of the American market versus making wine and cote rôti, where you have to do what the government says. We can make what we want, and hopefully the market likes them too.
Yeah, and just a quick comment about the AVA conversation that you were having. I'm a WSET level 3, and I'm not stating that because I'm bragging, but most people don't have that level of education in wine, whether it's in our industry or non-industry. And for me, because there's so many new AVAs coming on, which is actually tremendous for the wine industry, it's just hard to know. I don't know them anymore. You know what I mean? There's just so many, and they're in North Carolina and Virginia, and which is great. It's just, if I'm a wine person and I'm struggling with it, others like you said, Trey, it's gonna be a difficult thing to understand.
But don't you think that that's true even of those more established regions? Take a look at Germany, take a look at France, Burgundy,
Yes.
and the most
Even harder over there.
Exactly. The Mosel and the Burgundy. Exactly. And what you do as a wine lover is eventually you're going to find that realm of acceptable brands. And by that, I mean those AVAs that you love and like, and that's what you're going to gravitate to. And all six of us who are up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 7 of us are going to choose something different from each other. And that's what's going to keep this industry going. Yeah, it's confusing and some people will get turned off to it, but hopefully eventually they're going to find that acceptable brand. I love Gevrey Chambertin versus Maurice Saint-Denis or Malconsort or something like that. People are going to know that and they're going to know those names, and that's the wine they're going to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always said that one of the, Bob and I have had this conversation before. One of the things that I think what we love about Syrah is that it is the grape that shows its place more than anything else that we work with in Washington.
Really?
So vineyard,
I felt that a long time.
so vineyard to vineyard, it's so diverse. The problem when a consumer side is a consumer may try a Red Mountain Syrah and go, "Oh my God, I love Syrah. This is amazing." Blah blah. And then they order a Syrah from the Rocks District, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" They're not even closely related, and so now there's confusion, and they're like, they're a little gun shy to even order Syrah because they don't really know what they're getting. Yes, that is the sort of general wine drinker. That's not the people who are going to wine country all the time and really getting into it. But we have to recognize that that is a problem because they are responsible for 95% of the wine sales out there. We're trying to cater to those 5% of the really geeky wine people who dig all those interesting facts when the market is a little different than that. And so we just have to recognize that, make sure that we're focusing our attention to both of those things, I guess.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Given the price points that you guys kind of play at being a smaller winery, and giving, we know that people in their 20s have less money than any any generation before, so those price points are really tough. Have you ever thought of doing some kind of a Washington winemaker collab where you can get down to a 15 to 1999 collection, and it's still you're still small producers, but you're collaborating on something a little bit larger to get more volume, to kind of decrease that price, just to kind of engage them and say, hey, here's what we can do at this price. And then you kind of follow them along to, as they, get more money, they're making, they're growing in life and can afford more bottles, just out of curiosity.
I think it's
Pitch
still
right over the plate for Trey.
I think it's still viable to make, kind of a 950 FOB Syrah in Washington, especially because of the current state of the industry. Unfortunately, the only problem that we have, and one of the most or the heaviest problems when it comes to cost, is the tariffs right now on foreign stuff, right? When you talk about, capsules, corks, glass, well, now glass, you can actually buy it domestically. I mean, it doesn't have to be from, China, etc. But still, you can definitely achieve something. It's not going to be your brand new French oak, big, bold, extracted Syrah. It's going to be a leaner Syrah, way, way more neutral oak on that stuff. Maybe 12 months only, so you can get a quicker return. But it is viable to make a 950 FOB, which will retail at $20 at the most, right? Let's say New York, East Coast, if it makes any sense. I would think there is viability for that, and I think that is a great suggestion for a lot of the winemakers right now, to make at least one of their wines that way, that can go into the market for younger peoples to buy and drink, and start kind of getting immersed into wine.
Yeah, they're there for a reason. Yeah.
And you're also not going to be selling that through distribution at $10 a bottle, because you're not making any money at that point. Like you need, if you're doing that, you have to be making 5 to 10,000 cases to even make an impact these days. Mhm. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Rose in a bag. That's the way to go. Right.
That drops your cost too. I mean, especially, labor and glass and everything else. If you have egg, it will definitely drop your
Yeah.
cost for that matter. So, yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't see, we'll probably shop at Costco, and I see French and Spanish reds that are, $9 to $11 a bottle on the shelf.
Heavily subsidized, Bob,
Yeah, it's
It's
the
just
only
a
way to
market that
go.
is super subsidized.
There was about $11.49 Vaqueras, Southern Rhône, KS. It was delicious. I'm biting my tongue because this is a Washington Syrah event. It's got to be the subsidies that make that happen.
Subsidies from the Spanish government?
Yeah. Spanish government's basically
French
paying them
government
to
on this one
be able to do
for
that.
Baccarat.
Paying Costco?
No, paying the
Paying the producer. Yeah. Which allows them to sell the wine at such a low price to be able to get it here in the US for $12,
their
Okay.
cost of making it is $3. The cost of selling it to Costco, it's $6. Costco doubles it, it's $12. They're making money.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's very, it's
What a
very, very,
racket.
very inexpensive. when it comes to the European Union market, it is a completely different animal.
Yeah, and we think we are a little bit overplanted in Washington. California is even worse, and France is even worse, and Spain. I mean, people are pulling out vines. Thousands and thousands of acres of vines are being grubbed up.
Really? Do you think that's going to happen here?
In Washington, it already
Washington
has.
or
It's already.
So,
Ugh.
So
What
maybe
are they
not,
going to do instead?
not on that scale, but I mean, we have the
kumquats.
largest winery in Washington State. At one point was 8 million cases, is now down to 3. Where do you think all those grapes are going to go? Like, there's no home for all those grapes, right?
Indeed.
If you looked at a pie graph of Washington, when half of that pie graph is one entity, and then
Yeah.
there's another 999 wineries over here, and then that half of the pie graph cuts production by 70%, those grapes are just not going to filter into the supply chain where we're just going to go buy that. So there's
There's your Gen Z wine right there. Right here on Thursday.
all right, Jesse. I want you to start a brand down in Florida for us.
Well, let's create a Thursday label. How about that?
There you go.
There we go.
See Thursday late.
What's the point? Yeah.
And so you've got, the downside of, Kevin White is closing his doors. Kevin White Winer, yeah, he's closing. I've had 2 calls in the last 2 months from wineries saying, what do I do? How do I exit?
Yeah, there's 4 wineries who, by owners in their 80s out here in the Rattlesnake Hills, they're closing. It's just, yeah, it's a wave. It's a demographic wave. It's also, both on the consumer and the producer side. Yes, without a doubt.
Kiss French, but drink Washington.
There we go.
Man, Bob, keep them
Bob.
coming.
Okay.
I'm making a bumper sticker, buddy.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Jeez.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jared.
Jesse.
Thanks,
Thank
Rosie.
you,
Nice to
guys.
meet you guys.
Thank you, Trey. Bye, Caleb. Bye, Rosie. Jared.
Bye, everybody.
Caleb, David, good to see you guys too.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah,
What a
thank you,
ball.
Jesse. Appreciate
That was
that.
so
was fun.
Thank you, Jesse, so
Yeah.
much.
Your wines are great. Thank you so much for sending it. I really appreciate it. It's last minute. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm glad we got them out to you. I'm glad they made it.
Yes.
They're awesome.
Me too.
Awesome. Talk to you
Good.
guys
Yeah.
later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Produced by Fedora J Productions. Tune in next Thursday and have a great week.